Welcome, everybody. This is Starting Out Bright, and I am so glad you're here. And you're going to be happy you're here too, because we have Krysta Harder in the house.
Hi.
So, before we get started, though, in case we've never met, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself, who I am, and who I'm not. First of all, I am nobody official with Bright Line Eating, but I have loved the program, and I got acquainted in May of 2019 when my friend Lori posted on Facebook that she had lost 57 pounds with a program called Bright Line Eating. If anybody was interested, they could just hit her up with a question. So my hot little fingers got over to Messenger as fast as they could. And Lori proceeded to tell me that there was a book called Bright Line Eating with 4 bright lines mentioned: no sugar, no flour, 3 meals a day, weighed and measured portions. And to all that, I thought, absolutely no way. There's no way that I could do that. But where was I? I was at 270 pounds, 5'2", and I had been dieting for close to 3 decades. And so I was at least willing to listen. And in fact, Lori and I got together for lunch, and she told me more about the program. So when we got done with that, she said, there's 2 things. If you want to get the book, and you'll want to get in the online community. And so that's what I did. She suggested We Eat Bright with Lines, which is a private group still going strong. And I got in the group, and I just sat and watched and read and saw photos of transformation after transformation. People losing weight, like a lot of weight, 50 pounds, 100 pounds, 150 pounds. And it didn't seem to matter what age they were either. And so here I was at 270 pounds, as I said, I'm having excruciating knee pain. My feet have been swollen for just about a year. I'm going to bed and with sleep apnea, snoring every night, waking up my husband, and many times really wondering if I would wake up in the morning. And so after about 2 months of watching and being on the sidelines, I jumped in, all in. And I promised myself that if I lasted 1 year, I would do what my friend Lori did. I would post on Facebook and help anybody that I could. Well, the year came up, 2020. I got started July 22nd. In fact, yesterday was my 1,500 Bright Line Day. Was I perfect all those days? No, but I'm still in it and plugging along. But here was the year up, and I was sitting in that chair right behind me. I'm a Christian, and I thought, what could I post to inspire someone? And I felt God say to me, Noreen, you can do more than post. You could connect people. These people that you met online, you could connect them if they would just tell their stories. Wouldn't that be great? And people could hear what it took for them to achieve great results. And so that's how the Zooms got started. It was COVID anyway, and that's how we were getting together. So it was really an answer to prayer, really, that we could get together. But who would come? Who would tell their story? Well, I'll tell you who does. It's the ones they so appreciate what it's done in their lives. And that's who we have today. We have Krysta Harder. You may know her as a Bright Line Loser on Instagram, or you might have seen her YouTube, A Measure of Freedom. Instagram, Bright Line Loser, YouTube, A Measure of Freedom. But here we are. And before I forget, I also want to mention, I stayed in We Eat Bright with Lines, but we now have Starting Out Bright too. So join us there too. It's a private group. And so without further ado, help me welcome Krysta Harder. Welcome, Krysta. And
Thank you.
We had such a great chat the other night, and you just have so much to give, so much to share. So I want to get right to it. And so my first question, though, because we all come from different things, different circumstances, can you just kind of give us a brief view of what life was like before BLE and how you got started?
Sure. Before I started Bright Line Eating, I was it was the pandemic. I was homeschooling my kids. I'm asthmatic. I was class 1 obesity. I was high risk. And so we pulled our kids out of school and I was homeschooling them because that's how afraid we were for my health. And so I was doing a lot of caregiving. Before that, I was a social worker before I had kids. And so that was an extremely stressful job. And I went from that right into parenthood, which came with its own set of baggage in terms of just a lot of complications with my kids and getting some PTSD from that. So that there was a lot of emotional eating. But I was a big kid. As soon as I was old enough to control what went in my mouth, I started gaining weight. And by early middle school, junior high, whatever you want to call it, I was around 130 pounds. And then I managed to stay 130 pounds. So through high school and all that, which was, I'm 5'2". So for a kid that size, that was still not, it wasn't great. And then in college, I controlled it essentially by exercise bulimia. When I look back, it was a small little Mennonite Bible college and there was really nothing else to do. So I exercised like 3 times a day. And, we had our binges at night and that was that. And then, then I graduated, got my social work degree and that was stressful. There's a lot of stress eating with that. And my weight started ballooning, complicated pregnancies with preeclampsia and which is like high blood pressure in pregnancy. And you swell right up and you're like a water balloon essentially. And so my weight would fluctuate huge with my pregnancies. I really struggled to get weight off after. So it was kind of that step ladder up that a lot of people have in their pregnancies. And then I did keto for 3 years, before, during, and after my last child's pregnancy, my 3rd child. And I always knew in that time something was missing. It never helped me lose the weight, but it did help me not gain more. But somehow, and I can language it now, like we as in the keto community of Instagram, we were all still binging our brains out. We were still all addicted to food. We just found loopholes. We were just manipulating our bodies in a way that we could continue binging without actually gaining the weight. And the food fixation was still just really present and something was missing. So that would bring me up until when I found Bright Line Eating.
So just a couple of things though. One thing you said, PTSD, and I'm thinking you mean that whole preeclampsia, like you were totally bedridden, right? And so there was a lot. And you said the other night that when you had the babies, you have 3, you said you have 3 wonderful boys. So you had the babies and you went through a period of dieting in between, like, right? Or exercise, like this binge exercising, and then bouts of self-hatred and all this kind of stuff weaved in between. Is that right? Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, how did you just get over that, or didn't you, before Bright Line?
Sure. Well, I don't think I got over it until I started doing inner work in Bright Line Eating for sure. But there would be a lot of self-loathing and self-hatred. The bigger I was, the less value I saw I had, right? There was a direct correlation in my mind between my value and worth and my size. As my size went up, my value went down. So exercise programs were always done out of self-hatred. You deserve to be in pain. Like P90X is a prime example. You've got me with, 1.5 times what should be on my body, trying to do P90X, and my knees are screaming because the joints shouldn't have that weight. And I'm like, you deserve this pain. You deserve this pain. Wow. Like that was,
it becomes really self-talk.
Yeah, it really does. And food plans too, is you deserve to be hungry. You deserve this. And then of course you break the food plan and then see you're terrible. And so It was just one type of self-hatred for another. And that's all there was.
And the
really.
other thing about keto, which what I'm hearing today, which we didn't talk about this part, what I'm understanding is when you said there's ways to get around it when you're on that program, they don't really measure quantities, right? So wouldn't it be kind of like bright line eating, except we're eating all just, the okay food, but if you eat too much of that, you're just going to gain weight, or you might be able to stay normalized for a while, but after a while,
Yeah.
even BLE food is going to get the best of you.
Yeah. Well, with keto, it's about your macros. So your carbohydrates to your proteins to your fats. And so the goal is 70% of your calorie intakes coming from fat. 70%. And then the other 30 is split between protein and carbohydrates. Now, a lot of people do keto wrong as well. Just a fun fact. People think they can eat as much protein as they want. You can't. Proteins break down into carbohydrates. You actually have to have less protein, less carbohydrates. So almost no vegetables, right? And really, you don't have to do protein because you're probably eating cream cheese and bacon. So you don't really need it. And so essentially, we would just be eating these unlimited quantities of your coconut milk, coconut oil, almond flour, goodies made with xylitol and stevia, and you could just eat the whole pan.
Right.
And you could just do that over and over again, and it's fine. Or 3 packages of bacon. Who cares? It's keto. It's fine. And it was all still just binging.
And the other part about that, and Susan mentions this in the book somewhere, that in all these other programs or whatever method you're using, it's up to you to execute the program. Yes, it is for us too in Bright Line Eating, but with the charts of food, there just seem to be really bounded quantities, like even in each category. So that's a totally different thing. I had so much diet chatter in my head, always trying to count something. Like you're saying 70%, not everybody has a calculator in their head. Like, did I get enough for today?
Right. So, no, for me, that just meant unlimited fat. That's all that meant to me.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. That's actually what I've thought keto is, really. I tried it and it was making me sick. But anyway, so you found Bright Line Eating, and from my understanding, was actually through the keto personality who had mentioned it. And so you got in, and do you mind telling your rock bottom though? Like what happened with because you've mentioned that you have ADHD, which can lend itself to like, oh, okay, well, we'll do this, now we'll do that. And and you mentioned that the other night, your rock bottom, which involved your husband, if you don't mind saying, because I think that really gives the scope of why you read the book.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, like Noreen said, I saw someone on Instagram, and she was just she was a serial dieter would be the best way to describe her. And she tried Bright Line Eating, and the hope I saw in her eyes, it was like she looked in her camera and just said, this could actually work. And hearing those words from someone who had tried everything and more, that was all I needed to buy the book, because ADHD impulse. So I bought the book. I was fine with everything it said. No sugar, no flour, and meals and quantity is like, we'll get to the quantities when we get there. But it doesn't talk about the actual food plan in the book until like the last third, the specifics of it. So when I got to the part where it was, because I was eating keto already, I was like, that's no problem. No sugar, no flour. No almond flour, no coconut flour, no xanthan gum, no, like all these things are flour, and no stevia, no xylitol. Those are sugar. I threw the book across the room. I closed it. I threw it across the room, and it sat there by my closet for I don't know how long. And I continued my little zigzag up of, keto off plan. And I got to my weight, what I would call my point of no return, which for me was 200 pounds was my point of no return at 5'2". I figured if I went over 200, always lost. This was just who I was now. And I was at 197.7. That's my starting weight. my highest weight. And my husband and I were having an argument, and it wasn't even about my weight because he's not that kind of guy. We were arguing about my ADHD because he is that kind of guy. He's a very type A personality. It's a very interesting match.
Great combo.
But it works. Yeah. He's my executive functioning. So we were having this argument. It was mostly around spending, ADHD, just zoning out, not doing my homeschool, all those things. And one of the things that came up around the spending was that I bought this darn book and I was going to read it. Dang it. I was going to finish this book. That's basically what he said. He said, you bought that book, you're going to finish it. It had nothing to do with him wanting me to start a weight loss plan. It had everything to do with like, you need to finish what you start. And somehow in that moment, I decided to prove him wrong. And which is very against my personality. I am someone that's influenced by her environment. I am not someone that rebels from within. I don't have that, oh yeah, I'll show you. I don't have that in me. I don't have that fight. You tell me I can't do it, I'll be like, well, I probably can't. That's more how I roll. So this was something in me. There was no lower to go. I was at the heaviest weight I could be. I felt like I was dying. I couldn't handle my ADHD. I was on antidepressants, on Ritalin. I was taking every vitamin known to mankind. I was eating keto. I was doing all these things and nothing was working. And this book was sitting here and I might as well finish it because then at least I finished a book. So I finished the book and then I signed up for boot camp.
You finished the book. I just gotta say this. I learned this because my husband and I are opposites too, in some ways. And I felt so much better after this one speaker on marriage said, this is one of you, here's the other. Now, you think that you're supposed to be exactly alike, but if you are, then one of you is not necessary. So I remember that, and I go with that. So, okay, you get into boot camp and you are now really cooking with gas. You lost your weight.
I did. Yeah.
You lost all the weight. And what was, there are so many things, like I say, you could be, it's like drinking out of a hose. Like it's coming at you so fast. Like I should be doing this. I should be doing that. And you also have your ADHD, so you could have all kinds of things going on. What were those core things that you hung on to right from the beginning? Because otherwise it would seem very overwhelming.
Well, and I think for me as someone with ADHD, the idea of doing it on my own was actually more overwhelming than going into boot camp and having my hand held and walking through the steps. And they've gone back to this now. So when people don't join, it's not just like boom membership, it's take a boot camp first and then go in. So it's a little more that way again, but because boot camp really walks you through it. Like you have the planning and preparation. And during that time I got a buddy. And so I was holding someone's hand as I cleaned out my closet, as I bought a food scale, as I figured out what I was going to use for a food journal. And I remember the day before my day one, Susan has a meditation in the planning and preparation module. It's called the Crossing the Line meditation. And to summarize it, she has you, it's 20 or 30 minutes long. It's a long meditation. And she has you envision yourself in a room and you start imagining the different things that represent your food journey thus far, the wrappers, the hidden things, the money you've spent. And you start to envision how it's all piling up around you. And she's really good about just coaching you through it. It's really quite graphic by the end of it. Like you're just in this mess, you're smelling it, you're seeing it, you're feeling it. And then she has just a line in the middle of the room. And on the other side is the beginning of the bright line eating journey. And obviously this is all much more meditative, how she says it. She has you cross the line. And when you cross the line, what happens is the line actually starts moving. The line starts moving farther away from you and starts taking that stuff farther and farther away from you. And then after that's gone, she has you envision your life once you're bright. Like you zip up into space and zoom ahead like several years, and you envision, you actually spend time It's essentially, she does a WOOP, the wish outcome obstacle plan,
Ooh,
in
I
this
gotta write
meditation.
that down.
Wish outcome obstacle plan. It's a way of envisioning the goal that you're going for and planning around what obstacles are going to be. So I did this meditation, not realizing what I was doing ahead of time. And I crossed that line on February 27th, 2021. I had planned to start March 1st, but I did that meditation on February 27th. And after doing that, I was just like, I've crossed the line. I can't wait till March 1st now. I've crossed the line. I can't eat a bite of sugar or flour anymore. So I was freaking out. I have this buddy. She was only 3 days ahead of me. If you think you can't help someone and be someone's buddy, she only had 3 days in the program.
Wow.
And she was my buddy. Yeah. So anyone listening to this at any point, you have what it takes to serve someone else. Absolutely. If you're listening to this, you have what it takes to serve someone else. Anyway, so she held my hand. I was terrified. I just remember the same feeling when you bring your first child home from the hospital and you're like, holy crap, what is this? They're trusting me with this little, that's that feeling. Because it was like, what if this works?
It's like my niece, she said, they're letting me take him home. I'm like,
yeah.
What? Like there's no
now what?
manual.
Right? Like, goodness, that's the feeling.
What a beautiful relationship. And seriously, it had to be empowering for your friend too, your new buddy, to at least give the little bit that she was ahead, to give to you. What a beautiful story that is. That's just incredible. Yeah. So you crossed the line, you mentally crossed the line, you got started immediately. You couldn't wait because you were now in a different identity, right?
Yeah. And you know what made this different than any of the other things? I never had a final meal. I didn't have the Last Supper. When we start plans, and keto was the same way, because with keto, you have to be on plan for at least 3 weeks to even get into ketosis. If you're having a cheat day every week, you're not eating keto because you're never in ketosis. So with keto, there was always this, if I was off plan, eat, drink, for tomorrow we die. Like that was the mentality, right? You have to just get it all in for you. And I didn't do that with bright line eating. I crossed the line and I was like, okay, well, those two days I would have had to do whatever. I'm trying to think how many days are in February. No, I think it would have only been one more day. But I didn't get that last meal. I just walked in. I just went in.
And so you got started, you just kept on going. And at some point, you became very familiar with parts work. I want to talk about that because that's a lot of mental too. You just had mental energy that you talked about. Look how big that is, that you literally could not see yourself having the last meal. I mean, that's a big deal for any of us who are preparing to do something big, like a diet, something scary, no sugar, no flour. That was scary for me. But,
I would add, just before we get into parts work there, I would add that is the biggest gift I could have given myself. I don't have a memory of what my favorite foods taste like. Because when you're doing that last meal, you're in a different zone. And you are hyper aware of every bite you're taking, every flavor you're taking in. And when you're having those food thoughts later, that's the Rolodex that's coming back. I don't have that. I didn't take that last meal. And the biggest gift you could give yourself is to start before you plan to start.
Wow. That's, I mean, I have not heard that before, but so
I just thought of it now.
Let's get into the parts work a little bit, because you have some interesting concepts on it. You talked about your first time that you got into it. It was through meditation, and you really were not convinced at first that this was going to be for you. And why was that?
No. So I too come from a spiritual background. So I heard about parts work probably 6 or 7 times. And when I say heard about, I mean heard the whole structure and heard it explained thoroughly 6 or 7 times before I even gave it a shake. But the first time I remember thinking, demon possession. And then the second time I heard it, I remember thinking multiple personality disorder. And, you know, by the third time, I remember thinking this is all just make believe. And then after that, I started listening a little more. Like it comes in layers because it hits really abstractly. For anyone that doesn't know what parts work is, the official name for it, if you want to do any Googling, is called internal family systems therapy. So there's family systems therapy, which is when a therapist works with a family and, you know, people have roles in the family and they're working with that. So a therapist realized that most of their clients had a whole family of voices in their own mind, basically. And so that's what parts work is working with your own inner family. And so personifying your anger. If you're feeling angry, you say, a part of me feels angry. What does that part look like? What does it feel like? How old is that part? And you get to know a part of you. And this enables you to get centered and yet dialogue with that really intense emotion and problem solve and resolve things. So it's really a fascinating form of therapy, but it took a long time for me to take it seriously.
Yeah, well, you know, in our conversation, you talked about like the food indulger and the food critic and all these things. When you start talking like that, though, and the isolator, like it's like, yes, I have parts in me, or the critic, that I remember one time we had a Toastmasters group on campus where I work, and I was going to go to my first meeting, and on the way, it was like 2 buildings over. The first time over, I felt like I had 2 little gremlins on my shoulder, and one saying, "Who do you think you are, getting up in front of people to talk?" And then the other one is like, "Hey, I mean, I'm really having this conversation." The other one's, "Hey, like, leave her alone, because, you know, look at the funeral she was asked to talk to, or because she was a parent at the meeting, you know." And they were like arguing with each other. And when we talked the other day, it brought back that time for me, because I think that in a way I was experiencing parts in me that were exactly doing what like our food critic and our food indulger might be doing. And I just don't know the part about personifying them, you know, other than like,
and that just, not everyone does. I'm a very creative person and a very visual person. So for me, that works. Some people don't. They just describe them, if anything, like a fuzzy, they might give it assign a color to it, like when they're feeling angry or like where they feel it in their body. And they might just go there. So if you're less creative, you can still do parts work. It just looks different. Yeah.
And you mentioned the other night that I think it was your food critic part. I might not have it right. Saying that you are creative. And was that the food critic, though, that you came out?
It was an inner critic. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not necessarily a food critic, but it's, yeah, I did some, that's okay. So I have an inner critic that I have worked with, and she's like your classic angry, crotchety old school teacher. Like that's like the bun in the hair, the glasses, like that's her. And just everything, like you're not doing anything right. You're not doing anything right. And so in dialoguing with her, I was able to, because these parts of us they're usually naive. They're trying to help us somehow. They're just really bad at helping. They're usually good at noticing a problem, but they're not good at solving the problem. They're great whistleblowers, not good problem solvers. So this particular part would notice all my problems and you can't do anything. And I had to dialogue with her and help her understand, do you realize that I'm never even trying things because of your criticism? And that shocked her, right? She was sort of unaware of the consequences of her actions. And so helping this part understand the damage that it was causing, helping this part understand, I'm not the 6, 7, 8-year-old girl you seem to think I am. You're frozen in time. I have grown up. Look, this is who I am now. Can you surrender to my centered self? Do you trust my centered self to make an appropriate decision? And the part would be like, well, yeah, usually they do. They will either resign to you or they will resign to your higher power. Sometimes you'll get a part that's so resistant that just doesn't trust you, but it might trust God. And so you go that direction. And then you assign the part a new job. And you usually can ask the part what they would like. And this part wanted to paint. That was the weird thing. It was really random. This inner critic decided it wanted to paint. And that was so bizarre to me. And sometimes these are just like make-believe pictures. Sometimes, you'll just send a part to a beautiful meadow and you'll just imagine they're there playing, and that's that. So that's kind of what I thought was going on. Like, okay, she wants to be in this little art studio. Instead of criticizing art, she wants to make art. And I thought that was that. But you know what? After that, I started painting. I started doing watercolor painting, which was scary for me because you can't predict where the paint is going to go on the paper. And it was me conquering a fear. It was me trying something that I had always criticized deeply. I took art class right up until grade 12. And whenever we got to the watercolor unit, I hated it. So I was challenging myself with that. Not only that, I started doing lettering. And actually, since it was Tuesdays, it was after our conversation, I realized I am full on dyslexic. We're getting my son diagnosed. So I've realized since I am dyslexic, if I show you my actual writing, like this is my writing in my prayer journal. I don't know what it says. Don't read it. Don't pause the screen to read my prayer journal. But like, that's my writing. But when I do hand lettering, that's my lettering, because it's in the art part of my brain. It's in a different part of my brain. So I started conquering 2 fears with the help of this healed critic. I started painting. So what I thought was just this imaginary place it was going to, no, it produced a real physical change in my life. Wow. That I'd worked with this part. Yeah.
The more that I hear about it, the more I'm interested to do. And I have done a little bit just myself, but it's just very fascinating. And, you went through all of the things as far as going from it's woo-woo to now you're painting because you've been able to dialogue internally, internal family, and be able to move forward. I think that's really pretty neat. Okay. So the parts works has been part of your journey. You said that journaling is part of your journey. And I know that, as a social worker, maybe that's like a no-brainer for you, but what do you take of the journaling as far as for your journey?
Yeah. So, and honestly, that's an interesting one to think of in light of my recent realization of dyslexia. And I've always had terrible writing, spelling, grammar, but I have always been a writer. I have always enjoyed transposing my thoughts or my creativity onto paper. But that aside, I strongly believe that we are each of us our own best therapist. Before we would go seek out outside help, I think we all have the answers within us. We're all our own best therapist, and we get our money's worth way more out of a journal than we do out of a therapy session, I think, if we would only sit down and take the time to journal. So I have tons. I actually brought my journals because I wasn't sure what we were all going to touch on. So I have my primary journal is on my laptop because then I can type, and I didn't even realize I was accommodating my own dyslexia, but it's really so that I can get it out faster because my thoughts come out really fast. I have been doing it since February. It's over 200 pages, size 11 font. Wow. Yeah. And I do a lot of my parts work in there. It looks like a scripted play. I'll have my centered self. I'll have the indulger, and we're just talking back and forth in this journal. I'll write out my frustrations. Amazing. I'll problem solve. Someday I'll make it available to others because it's just my bright line eating inner work. 200 pages of it.
And so is this like on a Word document, or do you write your emails or what?
Docs. It's just Google Docs. I can access it from any computer.
And I do have a question here from Leslie who says, Krysta, did you do parts work on your own?
Most of it is on my own. Okay. I've never actually paid for a parts work session. I've done the meditations that are in there that Everett has put in there. I have watched a few of the witness parts work sessions. I have a couple of friends that see therapists, so they've given me tips. But I just journal. I just journal with my parts. So once you know the framework of like, get to know the part, thank the part, validate the part, form a real relationship. Let the part know how old you are, how it's hurting you. And then let the part come up with a new job. Those are the steps. That's what you're doing with your parts. Once you understand that, you can walk yourself through it in journaling, assuming there's no big T trauma. Big T trauma, you should definitely, just as a disclaimer, get a professional involved, because you might get overwhelmed at a certain point, and it's good to have someone holding your hand. I have little T trauma. I don't have the big T trauma.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And okay, so the journaling.
But journals.
This is a big part.
Yeah. So here's another one. I got this is just from Dollarama, which any other Canadians in the house, whoop, Dollarama. So it was probably $3 or $4, and it's just a sketchbook, like blank paper. I got this when I started Bright Line Eating. The first thing in there is from the Crossing the Line meditation.
Wow.
And as I had my journey, I did things. As I learned to meditate, I drew a picture of what the breath work looked like to me. As I started weeding things out of my life and realizing that I could make my life better, and so just everything, there I wrote out a psalm, because that was my inspirational reading for the first 150 days was the book of Psalms. I just did a psalm a day. Because I was poor. I had signed up for boot camp, for crying out loud. That's a line from a meditation. They're not good. They're not bad. They're just thoughts. Learning to sit with your thoughts, emotion. There was a lot about meditation, because I was brand new to meditation when I first started. Different seasons. There was a couple I wanted to.
Do you
where I feel my
meditate at a certain time every day? Wow.
No, this is, I've only done maybe 30 pages in my entire 2.5 years. It's just when something would come up that I wanted to externalize. But a big one was when I decided to be a Bright Lifer. And I mapped that out for myself when I finished boot camp, what it would look like. I don't know how well you can see it. So this was like people reading the book, people filtering in, some people doing boot camp, it getting smaller and smaller, the number of people staying on the road, the number of people falling off and falling into the ditch. Then here, there is a fork in the road. And you can either I could either do it on my own, or I could do it with others. And what you see here is people falling into the ditch and 2 other people on the road pulling them back. And it's about that community. And it was that realization that if I signed up for Bright Lifers, I knew that at whatever point, if I fell off the road, there would be people to pull me back on. And that meant so much to me that was worth it. And so different points in my journey, I processed in this journal. So that was a visual one for creative people.
Well, I saw the 100 days. It looked like you had some
gains and losses.
That. Gains and losses.
I'll get to that in the non-scale victories, but okay. My gains and losses in a positive way. I lost weight, I lost the need for Ritalin, that sort of thing. So
amazing.
Just, it's.
I see a note from Bernie, so creative and gifted. Shauna, you are so talented. Krysta, have your artistic abilities increased since doing Bright Line Eating?
I would say so, but only because I practiced, right?
Okay.
We have the free time. We have the free time, so we do it. Here's a good one. Damming up the riverbed.
Wow.
And damming up the riverbed.
Neural pathways?
That's about the neural pathways. We dam it up. It starts to dry out, and what happens? New growth can happen there. So that was, just visually processing things. Fun fact, that's a dyslexia thing. We see life in 3D, apparently. So
wow. Just totally incredible.
And you don't have to necessarily be creative to do that. Maybe you're a visual thinker and you're not creative, but you need to map things out, especially parts work. Sometimes it's nice to, just scribble it out on paper and have a place to just do that visual work. But another one I have that are less creative but are inspired. I call this one Delightful Notes, and it's almost more of a keepsake scrapbook. And it's little things, my moments of sobriety and really just wakeful moments. So this is the sweet pea that I put in my hair when I pulled over to the side of the road and realized I am sober enough that I noticed a sweet pea growing in the side of the ditch. And I stopped my car and I picked it and put it in my hair. And it was wow, I'm sober. And then just, just those moments of delight, and the things go in here somewhere. There's probably a chrysalis, stuff like that. So if you're not an artist, and it's not every day. And
like
then
the other part of journaling is your food journal, which keeps you on point.
Yeah.
How does
that looks like? That's a day planner. This one here. It's just literally like an office person. I'm trying to find a blank page to show you. Not that it matters if you see my food journal, but it's just lined pages with like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock written down the side margins. And I have a whole evening habit stack I do on there. I write out my schedule because I have ADHD. So I make 3 columns. I write out my schedule. I write out my screen time because I have struggled with screen addiction. So I schedule it out, and then I've got my food. So I start with my schedule so I know what my day is. And because I know what my day is, I know if there's going to be things tripping me up. I know if I'm going to have lunch later. I know if I'm going to be going out to eat. I've got it all planned out. So then I write out my food, and then I go back and figure out my screen time, which doesn't matter. And then there's room at the bottom. So I have a little habit stack. This is my only journal for the evening. I don't have a separate gratitude journal, 5-year journal, none of that. I write down 1 gratitude, 2 attaboys, and 3 prayers. 1, 2, 3. And I just, right there at the bottom, my food commit buddy gets to see it every night. She sometimes comments on it, sometimes doesn't. But that's how I write out my food. Yeah.
And I have to say, because this sometimes takes people by surprise, when you have not crossed any lines. You have not broken your bright lines. But you have kind of a different outlook about being what is called a crystal vaser. Like, can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So people use the phrase crystal vaser as in, someone that hasn't broken their lines, or someone who's working kind of a flawless program or something like that, as if that exists. When Susan said it, she says it in the second or third module of boot camp. And I don't think she says it in the 2.0 because she's trying to kind of do away with that languaging now. But in the original one, in module 2 or 3, she says, if you are still bright, if you have kept your lines until this point in time, you need to guard that as if it's a crystal vase, as if it is this precious, cherished heirloom that you don't want broken. Don't go breaking your lines. And I was so all in at that point that I just listened, and I was like, I'm going to guard this like it's a crystal vase. And so I do embrace there's a lot of people like, I don't call myself a crystal vaser, and it's like they're kind of avoiding the perfectionism of it. But I think crystal vase is actually a mindset. And I don't think it has anything to do with having immaculate, perfect, bright lines. I think it has everything to do with how you treat your program and how you guard your program. You could have one day bright. You could have break, resume, break, resume, break, resume, got 3 days bright. And you're like, nothing is going to make me break my lines today. I will guard this program. You have a crystal vase because that's how you are treating your program like a crystal vase. If you treat your program like it's a precious 100-year-old heirloom and you're not going to let anything break that, you have a crystal vase. If you let other things compromise your program, if you're more worried about what other people think at the meal and you're going to compromise your food plan, you don't have a crystal vase, even if you've never broken your lines.
And so to me, that kind of gives just a whole different spin on it, because you can be of the mindset that, well, once it's done, I'm just not that anymore. But
like Virginity.
You talk about it is like, no, like you're starting again. And you know what? I'm going to really not, sometimes it's the humbling experience of breaking it. Like realizing, I thought this was going to be easy until it's not, because, I felt like it was really easy for a while there, and kind of got a little wonky because I was taking it for granted. And then that hit me in the face because no, I can fall off too. So, but when you were talking about yourself, it's like, but you've used things like carrot fries where you're cooking the heck out of them and they're getting lighter and lighter. And really, how many carrots are you having? But
Yeah, exactly. It adds up. I actually was on a coaching call last night to deal with that part, my quantities girl part. Yeah. And Lyndon, one of the coaches, she said it well. She said, you've got a part that's gaming the system, right? It's all technically right, but I can fit 3 pounds of raw carrots into 10 ounces of carrot fries, because boy, can we really cook those babies down. And
now Wendy wants, boy, now I want carrot fries.
And if you cook them properly, they're fine. If you're not a 10 plus quantities girl like me, you'll be fine with the carrot fries. Yeah.
But it's coming to terms and being honest with yourself. But at some point, if you've fallen off and you want to get back on, no, it's not too late to have that kind of integrity and really like, you know what, I want to do this. Again, it can be a humbling experience if you fall in the ditch. It's
mindset. And you know what, actually, I didn't tell you this story last time. I have a 100-year-old butter dish that is crystal. And I got it from my parents a few months ago. And for the first little bit, we cherished this dang thing. It was like this was my great grandmother's butter dish that she got for her wedding. Beautiful, immaculate thing. And we were all very careful with it. And we used it as our butter dish. I was like, I'm not putting it in a shelf somewhere to gather dust. I'm going to use it. And ironically, I'm the one that broke it. Ooh. I'm the one that broke it. I was just being careless. I don't even know I think I was probably trying to grab 2 or 3 things at once, and I grabbed the butter dish and the lid fell off and smashed. Right. And it does, it happens. Yeah. And wouldn't you know it, crazy glue can put crystal back together really well.
Yeah.
So there's that. You can take that where you want with the analogy, but that's when it really set in for me that it was a mindset thing, because the only thing that changed that caused that dish to break was my mindset. I was more casual with it, and that's why it broke.
And that really speaks with the program. Like, for me, just last week, I have really been diligently packing my breakfast and lunch. My husband cooks dinner but I do my breakfast and lunch. But going out of town for several days, did I pack my breakfast and lunch? Just once. And that was being too casual. Like how nobody knows how I eat. They're thinking I'm really eating something weird, but they don't know. And so that was taking it for granted. And then I paid the price. So, I can't believe the time on this. And I don't want to miss the opportunity for you to talk about what you are, this season that you talked about to me the other night. And you're in a season of spiritual awakening. And it has a lot to do with your sobriety towards food, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like there's 2 journeys in any addiction recovery, but we're talking about food addiction. And that one is getting over the substance or process addiction. But the other part is actually getting sober. And those, in my mind, are actually 2 different processes. So for me, especially as someone with ADHD, my brain needs more dopamine than most. I'm more likely to go dopamine seeking. So I call it the Plinko board. I went from food addiction to social media addiction, from social media addiction to spending addiction, from spending to exercising too much, to this, to that. I would argue right now, I'm probably addicted to inner work, and it just kind of goes back and forth down the way. And as I went along, I surrendered thing after thing. The food addiction had many Plinkos itself: dairy, air fryer. A lot of people, nuts is another one they have to surrender. For me, nutritional yeast, and all these little things that come up and try and be the next dopamine hit. And you're surrendering and you're surrendering and you're surrendering. Eventually you get to the bottom of the Plinko board and there's nothing left. And you wake up for the first time. You just wake up, and it's unlike anything ever, because you just realize that you're not using anything to be happy except life itself. And that is sobriety.
Wow.
And it comes in moments, and that becomes what you pursue instead of dopamine. Instead of a hit, you start pursuing wakefulness, and you start pursuing that meaning and that purpose in your life. And you start seeing the other stuff as sabotaging, just like we see sugar. It's really easy, I think, for a lot of people in Bright Line Eating to like see sugar and flour as the enemies eventually. And it's like, yeah, these things are trying to kill me. But when you get to that place of being awake and sober, you start to see all the things vying for your dopamine as like just as much trying to rob you of your freedom. And so there's a spiritual awakening to that goes beyond any one religion. It's beyond Christianity, Hindu, New Age, whatever, of just awakening to who you are, to your soul, to all of that. And I'm not going to go off spiritual woo-woo anything, but the point is it crosses over all of that, but it is so deeply spiritual, whatever your spiritual path is. And that's where that sweet pea thing comes in, right? Because that was a sober moment for me, and that's why I kept that,
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds like you find your authentic self. You're not in a rush with the distractions of what I got to be busy with, I got to do this now. I mean, you can be distracted and addicted to volunteering. You can do anything that, whatever, it is that you want to, have on your plate. But, well, I think that's just so powerful, Krysta. I really do. It's just, when you spoke of that it's almost like you're chasing the dopamine hit, and then just, it sounds like more inner joy.
Yeah, for sure.
And
I think there's a fear around, what if there's nothing left? Like we start, first I'm going to have to give this up, then I'm going to have to give that up. And what if there's nothing left? Well, when there's nothing left, that's when it gets good. Because then you realize what all that stuff was covering up.
Wow.
Like we want to get rid of stuff. Yeah.
And probably the people around you too, that they just become more in your circle, really. Even though the people you're living with and everything, there's just more. I can't believe this time. And I do have a couple more questions. One, you are now in maintenance, and through all this, and I don't know that you said how much you lost, but what have been the non-scale victories? If you don't mind saying what you've lost, and then what are the non-scale victories that you've had?
Yeah. So I lost, when people want like an exact number, I usually say 77 pounds. My range, it's anywhere from 70 to 80 pounds is what I've lost on a 5'2" frame. So I do have a moderate amount of loose skin. I am planning actually to get my skin removal for my stomach in November. So that's something I'm doing. But my non-scale victories, I mean, there's so many, there's almost too many to count. I was going to look at some of my earlier ones here, because I know that's probably relevant to people just starting out, to hear some of those earlier non-scale victories.
Well, our non-scale victory is from Bridget. It says your social media posts are great. So that's ours from
that's
you.
one. I mean, that's one of the outlets that resulted. I started on Instagram because I needed to be seen. I needed my food to be seen and have that accountability. And then it grew into something where I was like, there's a gifting there, and to use that as my service. So I lost 30. Well, at that point I had lost 32 pounds by 100 days. I lost the need for Ritalin, lost the need for citralopam, lost the need for my Singulair, my B vitamins, my melatonin. Lost my wasted time and energy. I lost all the food comas. I lost the icky tummy feelings. I lost some acne. I lost tooth pain and plaque entirely, I should say. I don't get plaque. I go to the dentist and there's no plaque, which also means, and this is me just jumping to conclusions, but bright lighting must be good for Alzheimer's, because the plaque on your teeth is the same as the plaque in your brain. That's something to think about.
Wow.
But that's just a wives' tale rumor I'm spreading now. Anyway, lost mood swings, lost insatiable hunger. Realized I can come back anytime. I lost all food guilt, lost discomfort and distracting thoughts about myself while I should be focused on others. That's a big one for you, right? When you're sitting there talking to someone and and you're thinking about your stomach and your pants and is your shirt sitting right? Like that's gone. That's
Or
gone.
like if there's a food table by you and you're like, but I do want to get over there. Hold that thought.
Yeah, that too,
Go
right?
over there.
And so some of those are like the older ones. For today, I would say I'm not afraid of my own failures and weaknesses. That's a big one. That spiritual awakening. I'm not afraid of my body. In fact, I work as a team with my body. When things are going on, there's compassion. When I was eating keto, there was manipulation of my body. It was me working against my body, trying to trick my body. Now I love my body and I work with my body in every way. Like when I'm tired, I sleep. I don't take more caffeine. You know, when the scale's going up, I look at that with compassion. Are you stressed, body? Are we eating something that's not agreeing with you? There's this love and compassion in that relationship that's never been there before, including in exercise. Exercise is empowering. We both enjoy it, my body and I. Like, yeah, I'm a better wife, better mom. Discovering my son's dyslexia and mine, that happened because I'm sober. I'm not in the food. I'm noticing things, right? Self-awareness, and the biggest one is grace. I have so much grace over myself, and that came by the power of God. That's all I can say. I spent 2 years doing my morning pages, and I do it in a prayer journaling back and forth style of just me shooting myself down and God being like, oh, my precious girl, and just loving on me. And that gave me grace for myself in everything, no matter what's going on, that I have grace around it. And grace is the most efficient fuel. It really is.
I just love that so much. So here we are, the last question, Krysta, and just thank you so much for being here. I mean, for sharing your story. If someone was asking you that they're thinking about bright line eating and wondering, could they do it? What would you say to them to encourage them?
Could you try it just for today? Could you just try it? Just try it for one day and then decide whether you'll do it tomorrow. I would really bring it right down, take the grandiosity out of it, just bring it down. And I would also say, dare to hope. Hope is really, really scary for any of us who have tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed. And usually by the time we get to something as intense as bright line eating or any food addiction recovery program, it's kind of our last ditch effort. And that's really scary, but dare to hope. Hope is just as efficient a fuel as grace, really. It's not going to steer you wrong. And also that you are worthy. You are worthy of this journey. You are worthy of the time it takes to do this journey right, even if that means canceling plans and prioritizing yourself over, I don't know, the 2 hours of TV you'd normally watch with your partner, whatever it might be. Like, know that you are worthy, and never apologize for being high maintenance, because we are all treasures, and you're a treasure before you've lost the weight. You are a treasure now. That will not change when you lose the weight. You are just as much of a treasure already, and you're worthy of taking care of who you are.
That is so great. I just love it so much. And when you said that about hope, it made me think of you looking at that woman on Instagram. In that split second that she chose to post that video, you saw the hope, and she gave you hope in that split second like that. And it's like that person with 3 days experience over yours, lending you a hand, giving you hope. I mean, just like, look at this, these different little touches in your life, and we can do that too. You've certainly given us hope and a lot to think about. I can't believe how fast the time went. And Krysta, you are amazing. I hope that everybody will go and see you on your Instagram at Brightline Loser. And definitely get into her YouTube videos. I don't know if you can find it by your name, Krysta Harder, but it's also A Measure of Freedom. So make sure
Mhm, yeah.
you get over there. That's how I saw you, was on one of your YouTube videos, and I just had to connect with you. And so I'm so glad that you agreed to share your story. So any last words for us?
Oh, just I'm so grateful that you did, and it was just as much of a blessing for me as for you. Like, to be here to reflect on the journey is always so amazing. I think any last words, I would say, if you are debating whether it's worth it to try a boot camp, try it. Try it. It was $1,000 Canadian for me when I did it. 700 US. I had to pay 200 extra for the meditations. And I did it. It was a lot of money, and I have never looked back. If you knew doing that was going to be what gave you your life back, right?
Mhm.
That's a lot cheaper than any medical bill.
That's true.
Any medical, right?
Yeah.
And you get your hand held. Like, it's my success. Yes, it's mine. I did it, but it's because I was able to have the support that I had and still have. Like, just yesterday, this complex issue of this quantities part, being able to work that with a coach that's been there, that has decades of sobriety under her belt, to work this with me. That's because I'm in that membership.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, definitely. I've spoken to many who agree with you. And so if that is what one person here tonight is needing to, they need to get to brightlineeating.com and find out how to get to a boot camp and the membership. So Krysta, again, thank you so much for so much information and wisdom and just great heart stuff. I love so much. You've given me hope, and I'm sure everybody here. So I'm going to close as I do each week. Thanks again. Good night. Stay bright. Don't let the bed bugs bite. Good night, everybody. So, Krysta, how would you like to play 3-Question Thursday?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
You know what we didn't talk much about was your food. Your food.
It's true.
We did talk about, air fried carrots where you can cook out of it, and just it'll get lighter and lighter. But do you have any favorites? Do you have any favorite things that you do? Seasonings or anything?
Yeah, I have I make the grab and go PB&J in the Bright Line Eating Cookbook. And I haven't for a while. I've been doing a different version of it, but I eat that almost every day. And I looked at that recipe at first. So it's in the weight loss portions, it's 1 ounce of oats, 2 ounces of peanut butter, and then 3 ounces of frozen banana mashed, and 3 ounces of frozen cherries. So like 6 ounces of frozen fruit, and that's it. And it fits in a snack size Ziploc bag. The whole breakfast fits in there, and you're like, never trying that. My quantities girl's like, I'm gonna eat that. Carried me so well. And so I would make like 20 or 30 of them at a time.
Wow.
Yeah. And just like weigh them out, stick them in the freezer. And then that was what I ate. You just grab it, you just eat it frozen, like a granola bar or something. Like, you just wrap a paper towel around and eat it. And it's fantastic. So I highly recommend that recipe. I have altered it. I have used sweet potato. That works really well. So if you don't like oats, you can roast sweet potatoes and put that in there.
In the PB&J?
Yeah, because they don't freeze anything that doesn't freeze like ice hard. Wendy says she did subbed puffed rice for the oatmeal. That would work too, because even if it's frozen, puffed rice is still going to be soft, right? So, and any fruits that don't freeze solid. So mangoes are good in there, blueberries, cherries, banana, pineapple. Those all work really well. A pineapple, if you do extracts, pineapple one with coconut extract and a little bit of cardamom is like,
nice.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be.
Well, you know what? You gave me a picture to use on the slideshow, and you have this mammoth bowl. I mean, big bowl of salad. It looks like it's something you'd bring to a potluck. Okay. So how do what do you do for dressing on that? I mean,
Oh, salad.
because that would just be like not enough dressing unless it was.
Yeah, no, the half ounce of oil does not go far.
Yeah,
I
what
agree.
do you do?
I never use my fat as my salad dressing.
Oh,
So I have a few salad dressings I do. I think the one you saw was my Mexican salad, maybe.
yeah, I think so
I
too.
think
It looked like there was some
so.
or beans on it.
Yeah. So usually I like a really big voluminous salad. So whatever ounces of salad, I do half spring mix, like half of it. So if I'm doing an 8-ounce salad, that's 4 ounces of spring mix. I'm using a fruit serving bowl for my salad. And then other veggies on top, whatever the salad you're making, the veggies to coordinate. If it's a Mexican one, I will for sure douse it in lime juice and salt and a little bit of cilantro. And then I'll use avocado for my fat and a 2-ounce condiment of salsa. And because of the lime juice, the salsa will incorporate more. It's not as dry. So that would be a Mexican one. Sometimes I'll make a chili bean to put in there too. So 6 ounces of beans and put the salsa in the beans and then add some taco seasoning. Microwave that with a bit of water and then it's saucy and you just put that in your salad. But a sweeter salad that I'll do at lunchtime is I will do cinnamon and balsamic vinegar. And then I'll do
cinnamon.
pecans for my fat and I'll put my fruit right in the salad. And then it's like, it is amazing.
Just a little sprinkle of cinnamon on top of the salad?
Yeah. So I think I'll do the cinnamon first. And I almost like shake the salad so the cinnamon kind of dusts more of the leaves instead of clumping. So and then I'll sprinkle it with the balsamic vinegar. And then pecans for the fat and the fruit right in the salad. If you have salmon for that protein, that's really nice in there. Tofu would be nice in there. Yeah.
And then just another response here. Kathy says, I use spicy brown mustard mixed with balsamic vinegar. It spreads really well in small amounts. Wow. Yeah. I would have never thought about that. And you did, this is still part of question 2. You said something about taco seasoning. Is that something you mentioned the other night that you make a taco seasoning? So I got to get that if you can remember how you make it.
Yeah. Can I run and grab it? I can grab my recipe book. Okay. I'll be right back.
Okay. Let's see. All right. We already talked about subbing puff rice for the oatmeal. What I'm wondering about on that PB&J is how long can it be out of the freezer? Does anybody have an answer for that? How long can the PB&J that is frozen, how long can it be out of the freezer?
I got it. I'm back. Okay. So we got 6 teaspoons of chili powder.
Okay.
It's actually just whatever scoop size you want. It's all written in teaspoons. So if you want to use a tablespoon and make a big batch, if you want to use a 1/4 cup measure, go ahead. So 6 teaspoons of chili powder, 5 teaspoons of paprika, 4.5 teaspoons of cumin, 1.5 teaspoons of oregano, 3 teaspoons of onion powder. And I have it in my phone. I can post it somewhere too. Like I can.
Well, we can put it in the starting out right group for sure.
Yeah. So 3 teaspoons of onion powder, 2.5 teaspoons of garlic powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne. So there's no salt. There's no cornstarch. It's just spices. I will buy my spices in like the ethnic section of my grocery store. So I'll buy like the big bag of chili powder and paprika and cumin and stuff. And I'll make like a freezer Ziploc bag of this stuff because I use it every day. And I'll use a 1/4 cup measure. So I'll do 6 1/4 cups of chili powder, 5 1/4 cups of paprika. And that's how I make it. I give it out as Christmas gifts instead of cookies. Here's some taco seasoning, right?
Nice.
Same thing. You can make a pumpkin pie spice seasoning. Like here, happy Thanksgiving. Have some pumpkin pie spice. Stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I use in my chili beans. I put my 6 ounces of beans, my 2 ounces of salsa, and like maybe anywhere between a teaspoon and a tablespoon of this seasoning, probably more if I'm really honest with myself. And some salt, but I salt it to taste. Yeah. Okay. You can throw complement protein in there if you use that. because complement protein is savory, so it kind of tastes like refried beans when you put it in there. So that's actually really good if you ever wanted a good way to eat complement.
That's fantastic. Okay, question number 3. This is for all the money, all the marbles. All right. You gave me a picture of the watercolor, which was amazing, and that's on the slideshow for those who are here or are going to watch on YouTube. But you also gave me a picture of like a whole bunch of books. They're meditation books, I believe. Can you talk about that?
It's daily readers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Daily readers.
Yeah. So I, on my Instagram, and I think it carries to Facebook as well, I have a habit stack of things I do every morning after the accountability call. I share a takeaway, I share something from a daily reader, I share a gratitude, and I share 4 intentions for the day, and then I do some kind of stupid little dance. And that it's just, I do it every day, and that's what my stories are. It's automatic for me. It's great for my ADHD and my social media addiction. It's like one and done.
You share that on your Instagram.
Yeah. So I have like, I don't know, 20 daily readers. I've got some here to show you. And there's all kinds of varieties. So because of my ADHD, I have some really silly kid-like ones. This one's called Love the Fur You're In, Monster Wit and Wisdom from Sesame Street. And so it's got little, quips and things, I'm trying to find a good one, but don't give a hoot, just play your song. Like just, so when I'm in a playful mood, these are the kinds of things. Like Dr. Seuss one, Seuss-isms, A Guide to Life for Those Just Starting Out and Those Already on Their Way by Dr. Seuss. And it's got, it'll have that There's No One More Youer Than You page, or, Take a Walk on the Wild Side, Know How to Make an Entrance, the different themes, Know When to Call It a Night. And it's got pages from different Dr. Seuss books. So I've got a few. I've got one that's Beauty and the Beast, so from Bell's Library. So it's quotes from books that would have existed when the story of Beauty and the Beast takes place. So that's kind of fun. And then it's got her little thoughts on it on the side. But then I've got some more serious ones. One that would actually probably be really good. I think this should be required reading. 50 Ways to Soothe Yourself Without Food by Susan Albers. It is so good. She's a psychiatrist that works with people with eating disorders. Okay. It is such a good book. Highly recommend. And it's broken down into like little easy to read snippets. So my ADHD brain loves this one. And the only other one I would say I have to recommend is The Daily Flame, 365 Love Letters from Your Inner Pilot Light by Lisa Rankin. Okay. So this one, just as a spiritual disclaimer, this one is New Age. However, the way it's written, I read it as, and I'm going to put my Christian lens on here. So if you're from a different faith, just interpret this your own way. But for me, I read these as a letter from the Holy Spirit to me. And that's really how they read. They really all read that way. And so I have gotten so much out of this one. But if you are more into like your higher self, or, the great divine or the great unknown, these work just as well for any faith, but really well also for the Christian faith. So The Daily Flame.
And I understand that Susan is going to come out with one. Is that right? Did you hear that too?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's the rumor. So I forget what it's called now, which I feel really bad because the group in Bright Line Eating is Bright Day Boosters. Kathy, do you remember what it's called? On This Bright Day, I think. Am I right? I think it's called On This Bright Day. I think you can already pre-order it too.
Okay.
It's already up for pre-order. Yeah.
Okay. So. Well, again, Krista, thank you so much for sharing your story, all this glorious information, and thank you for playing 3-Question Thursday. It's been a delight to get to know you.
It's been so fun. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an honor.
You're welcome. Good night, everybody. Stay bright.